I'm going to do trumpet.
Product Breakfast Club. Product Breakfast Club. Product Breakfast Club. Product Breakfast Club. Was it kind of supposed to be like David Byrne? David Byrne? Did you get that at all?
No,
I'm working on that.
I think I'm too young to know who that is.
Oh, you've got
David Byrne. Who's that?
Well,
no, serious.
Talking Heads?
Talking
Talking
right.
Heads.
Yeah. That's definitely before
You've heard
my
of
time.
Talking Heads, right?
Yeah, I've heard of Talking Heads, but I don't really know who they are or what they are or why they are. They're Radiohead, right? You mean Radiohead? Is that who you mean?
Oh, man.
It's Radiohead. I understand.
This is a Product Breakfast Club, by the way. And I am Jake Knapp. I'm your host in San Francisco. And
I am Jonathan Courtney. I'm your host in Berlin, Germany. That was like weirdly smooth.
I was really disappointed when I met you and you weren't German.
I know.
By the way. That's a big fake out that you're in Germany and you're not German. So what's going on today? We're doing a 30-minute podcast. I just set my time timer for 30 minutes.
I feel like there's been so little rambling in the last 2 episodes. Actually, last 3 episodes. I'd like to do a tiny little ramble. How about a 4-minute ramble? Just catch up with Jake's life, catch up with Jonathan's life. People are wondering, man. We have all these people, they just want to know.
They're like, what's going on? What's going on? Yeah. The big news for me is that the Make Time Book website, by the time this podcast is out, it's actually not out when we're recording it, but by the time the podcast hits, you will be able to go to maketimebook.com, maketimebook.com, and you'll be able to pre-order the book. So it's got a cover now. It's got a cover design. It's starting to look like it's going to be a real book coming out September 25th. So the website is up. I've been in Squarespace trying to move around those little table cells and resize those images and type that text, choose those fonts. And if you check it out, you'll see the results of all my labor.
Did you make the website yourself?
Well, in Squarespace.
Yeah, but you're a New York Times bestselling author and you're sitting there in your cave making a website on Squarespace. Right. I don't know. It doesn't sound cool to me at all.
No, it's not. Oh, yeah. Being a New York Times bestselling author.
Just that's not a cool image. It's not a cool image of you making that. You should have told us that it was like one of your 100 employees, you know?
I find that being able to do design work and writing a book and just in life in general is actually a great burden. You can't handle it when somebody else does it.
Yeah.
And you know how to do it yourself. So you're just like, oh, God, I'll just do it. Luckily, my co-author, John, is also a designer, so he does a lot of it too. But we're, the stuff, we have to do it ourselves. We can't handle it otherwise.
We don't obviously need to explain anything about what we did, but we actually did a little bit of design work for you last week.
Yeah.
Was that weird for you?
That was really weird for me. That's a more than 4-minute topic.
Yeah,
we should actually do a podcast about that. And we should bring in Dirty T for that.
Dirty T? Oh my God.
On the show. Because that was cool. And to tease it for a future episode, we did a sprint remotely. I mean, everything was crazy about it. It was a remote sprint that Aj&Smart team ran in Berlin. And we were trying to figure out, would it make sense? Could we come up with a design for an app to go with this book that would help people sort of apply the ideas in the Make Time book, get started with them? And could we come up with an idea that was so compelling that we could also then find a developer who would be willing to build it? Because we're not a development team. I do know how to design Squarespace websites, but I don't know how to make iOS apps. So anyway, that's what we did. And that was super cool. I got to be in the position of being the decider in a sprint, which was really fun.
You also pulled a little bit of a cheeky move as well. I watched the replay of your very cheeky move.
Oh, yeah.
That was cheeky, man.
I mean, I don't know if we want to spoil that now.
Let's spoil that.
Let's wait.
Okay, let's wait. Okay. But I think that it's really interesting. Like the user tests are going on into the night. I think they're happening also right now. But it's been really interesting, the results of that. We can talk about that in another episode.
Yeah. We'll know a lot too when we do the next one. And it's a different experience to be facilitating than to be the decider. I learned a lot of things that worked really well. Surprisingly well, being in those shoes. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. But cool stuff in the
very
pipeline.
Cool.
So,
Jake, I have a topic.
Okay, let's do it.
So we don't need to go into my stuff today. I'll just tell you 2 bullet point summary.
I was hoping we wouldn't have to.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I'll just give you a 2 bullet point summary. Bullet point number 1.
Could you make it 1?
Okay, I'll do it in 1 bullet point, but I'm going to put 2 points in there.
Okay.
One thing was we did our first live web class. As you know, we kind of travel around and give workshops, which is great, but not a lot of people can actually come to them physically. So we tried out, how can we actually do this online? First time ever. Really, really fun. Really, really cool. Super fun. And second thing is that running a company sometimes sucks. And we just talked about that before the podcast. And I'm not going to go into it today, but I mean, everybody hears this podcast and they're like, oh my God, it's so cool to run an agency and Aj&Smart is so successful and blah, blah, blah. But also, believe me, sometimes it really sucks to run a company. But that's for another day.
It's not all stretch limos and private jets for you guys. Part of the thing that when we talk about process and we talk about building products, part of the thing is you do stuff that doesn't work. I mean, I do stuff that doesn't work all the time. I've worked on products that don't work.
Yeah.
It's a big theme of things, and it sounds really glamorous and fun to talk about, oh yeah, fail fast. And failing fast, no matter how fast it is, it sucks. It feels bad. And it causes problems, real problems that you have to deal with.
Yeah, we made a bad bet.
That's the reality.
A bad bet or two that played out over the last few weeks. And it's always great. It's exciting in a kind of masochistic way. But yeah, now we're trying to deal with the consequences of making a bad bet. Good fun, though. Love it. So let's go.
We'll have to come back to that. That's another topic.
Yeah.
When you have righted the ship, we'll talk
about exactly.
If
how Aj&Smart still exists. No, we'll be fine. We're good. We're good. All right, let's do it. So I decided to open up the email address that we ask people to write into when they have questions, and quite a few questions in there that I hadn't seen. I hadn't opened that email since we started the podcast. So I thought it might be actually interesting to ask a few or answer a few of the listener questions today. What do you think about that, Jake?
I hate listener questions.
Me too.
It's the worst thing, but I'll do it. I know people like it. I like shows with questions. I get it. It's fun. It's a little bit of random chance thrown in. Let's do it. Fine.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
I know. Here we go. So Sara Murphy, guess what country she's from?
I don't know. You know, in the United States, it's not that clear where somebody's from, their names. It could be, I don't know, Murphy.
She's from Ireland. She's from Ireland.
Ireland. That's an Irish name. I get it. I should have known because you're Irish. That's what you were talking. That's where you're going with that.
First one I chose.
All right.
Sara Murphy asks, well, first she says, hey, John and Jake, love the podcast.
Shouldn't you do it in an Irish accent? I mean,
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Hey, John and Jake, love the podcast, and I love how long and rambly the show is.
Oh, that's
it literally says this.
Thank you, Sarah.
Long and rambly. You're welcome, Sarah. And I have a question because I hear you guys always talking about Silicon Valley, but what WTF is Silicon Valley? Question mark.
Oh, wow.
Not from Ireland, Sarah.
Okay.
The accent got a bit weird there.
Yeah. It was pretty good, though. That was better than mine would have been. Well, that's pretty good.
Well, I am actually Irish, so
yeah.
Let's go. When I read that question first, I was like, you know what? The first time I went to Silicon Valley, it sounds really stupid. Every American listening to this will probably think I'm really dumb. I also had no idea what it really was or what to expect, even though I was going there to work.
I don't think that's dumb. I don't even really know what it is. I might even live in it, but I don't really know. I was working for Google, and when I first started working for Google, I lived in Seattle, worked in the office up there. And then I worked for a year in Switzerland. And it wasn't until I'd worked at Google for 4 years that I moved down to San Francisco and was working in the Mountain View office and then the San Francisco office. Before I started working for Google, I'd heard Silicon Valley, that word, for years. And in my imagination, it was kind of futuristic. I was just picturing glass architecture, lots of lights, like Blade Runner if things were going a little better in the world kind of thing. And futuristic for sure. And a specific place too, like a valley. It is none of those things. Is there a valley?
So first thing, San Francisco is not actually Silicon Valley. Technically, it's not.
I don't think so.
That's an important part because I thought it was.
But I think more or less it is now because those same companies, that same kind of culture is in the city as well. The word silicon goes back to they were making chips. They were making microprocessors out of silicon. So I think that's where the name comes from. But it is not a futuristic looking place and it's not that dense. It's just a bunch of strip malls and then 2- and 3-story office buildings built in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And there's starting to be some newer, nicer ones, but Google was in those buildings. You just drive around, you'd be oh, Yahoo was in those buildings, Facebook, whatever, all these companies, they're just spread out. But what's real about it is the density of stuff that's going on. But so you came in, what did you imagine? What was your impression? Take me on that story of the Irish lad just stepping off the plane and
sure, I was invited to give a talk at Udacity's conference, I think it's called. It's probably a different name. Yeah, it's a very good name. And I had honestly no idea where, it was going to be in Mountain View, And Mountain View is like one of the main areas of Silicon Valley where Google is and where a lot of these other companies are. Google's in Mountain View, right? I'm not just pulling that out of my... And yeah, what I imagined is similar to what you described, like a built-up city area, super futuristic, really dense, like really packed full of people. But what it was like, it looked like my old college, like really low, like one-story buildings, like just not a lot of people around, beautiful, like grassy and like loads of trees, loads of nature, extremely not intimidating.
Yeah.
It was so strange. It was completely empty. Before I gave a talk at the conference, I went into the tour of the Google campus. It's super cute.
It is cute.
It's just cute. You're just like cycling around these tiny little baby buildings. It's really like very suburban. That would be like the word I would think of. Super weird and suburban. Like we stayed in Palo Alto near where Mark Zuckerberg's house was and is. It's like Ireland, basically. These tiny little one-story houses. You don't feel like you're in the place where the most important people in the world and the most important tech companies in the world are making their decisions. Very different to what I expected. So I was like completely shocked, but it was nice. It wasn't so intimidating. And it was also crazy, like being just around Palo Alto and Mountain View and like running into people that you talked about on The Verge. Like one of the first people I ran into was Astro Teller. This guy who was like running Google X I ran into him immediately, like straight away. And I was like, oh my God, hey, like a total loser like I was. I was like, hey, I'm a big fan, Astro Teller. But it was crazy. It was like this tiny area where everyone hangs out. And also in Mountain View, like this one street where everyone from Apple and Google and Facebook all come together in these Irish bars and weird German bars there. It's tiny, super weird. I don't know, man. Yeah. I was amazed by it.
That's also the magic of it. When I lived in Seattle, when I worked at Microsoft, and even when I visited, when I started working at Google and I really was regularly visiting Silicon Valley for the first time, I didn't totally get what was going on there. Why all the fuss? Because
what's the magic?
Yeah, what's the magic? Seattle had like a long-running big tech industry. Obviously, Microsoft was there. It may not seem like such a big deal now, but like back in the 90s and early 2000s, like, Microsoft just like dominated computers. And the other thing, obviously, is like Amazon. Like there's big tech companies up there. So it felt like we got a big tech scene here. And I didn't really see what the difference was. It's not immediately apparent what the difference is, or at least to me in the San Francisco area. But when I moved down there, I started to really get it. And I think what it is that there is so much density of companies there. So as you said, John, you like start to run into people or see people, working for these different companies. And you start to make friends with folks who work at all these different companies. They're all in the same place. And so when new companies start, a lot of people are already there. It's easy for them to hire people. It's also a place where a lot of people move to who are interested in technology. So they'll move there from other parts of the United States, other parts of the world. And so you get this group of people who are all really excited about building products. They went to a lot of effort to get there. And it's also a really like expensive place to live. So it's honestly like it's competitive. And it's competitive in a way that the culture of tech is often kind of laid back, at least on the surface. It's like the culture of the West Coast, United States is like, at least on the surface, kind of laid back. In Silicon Valley, there's this like intense competitiveness that is part of what I think makes those companies successful, because the people who work there actually kind of just like scrapping to like find, to pay the rent, to like do the things that you need to do. You have to be really super passionate. You have to love that stuff to have gone to all that effort to go there and be in it. That intensity translates to the work that's done. And it translates to the passion people bring to their projects. And so it's really hard once you've been here to imagine going somewhere else and being part of a company, starting a company, being part of something in another place, because you're like, man, I think I would miss that intensity or that passion. Even though all of that stuff, all those things I just said, they have a very real cost to your quality of life. They have a lot of negative effects on the community here. There's a lot of things about that stuff that's not good, but they're also parts of the ingredients that drive the sort of radical technology growth and all the cool things that we all love, or that many of us love, that come out of Silicon Valley. It's all yin and yang, man. It's all part and parcel of the same crazy soup. I didn't mean to end that on soup. That's not the strongest word.
No, it's fine.
Word.
It's not over. Jason, maybe you can edit the word soup out of that last bit. No.
Just beep it out.
Also, please.
Just beep it out. Every time I say soup, just boop.
So if you ever hear me referring to Jason, Jason is our amazing editor.
Amazing.
He has such a hard job with the Product Breakfast Club. God. It's a nightmare.
I can't imagine.
But I really want to give Jason some love right now. So Jason, thank you so much. So back to the Silicon Valley thing. And I think it's actually, I know it's just like this one email and maybe we won't even get to a second one. There's a couple of things. Number one, I was absolutely infected by the passion that people had and by the excitement that people had for their work. I had been kind of made a bit cynical by reading things like TechCrunch and The Verge and watching things like Silicon Valley, where everyone seems to be like an asshole and everything about it seems to be terrible and toxic. So I went there already like predetermined to not like it, I would say.
Right.
I'd already soaked in all the media hate for Silicon Valley and like Uber and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, this is going to suck. I'm going to hate everybody. Actually, it was really funny. Like a couple of the people at Udacity introduced me to some people at Google, a guy called Eric who's working on all of the crazy VR stuff. I was like shameless. I was like, hey, can I come to Google and meet you and hang out and have lunch and stuff? And he was like, yeah, no problem. Everyone I asked to visit, including you, right? I was like, hey, Jay, can I come over to GV and talk to you? You're like, yeah, no problem. I was like, oh my God. Like, felt like a major imposter.
That was a huge mistake, by the way. I thought you were someone else. That was terrible.
Yeah. You were like, you thought Elon Musk was coming over and it's just
trying
an Irish guy. Hey, thought you wanted to start a podcast with me? But it was crazy. Like, I was there for, I think, 2 weeks the first time I came there, maybe just 1 week, met loads of people. They were so excited about their work, like so pumped about the things they were doing in a way that you just never hear about here. Here, it's like, obviously, everyone's like pretty dispassionate about what they're working on because it's usually just a clone of something from Silicon Valley. And it's usually like, oh, yeah, I'm just working on this app that's basically this app from Silicon Valley, but a blue version. And over there was definitely this like feeling that even when you are out drinking, like I remember talking to another guy from Facebook, he was talking about like some kind of camera thing he was working on. And I never saw someone more passionate about talking about something related to something so small. And it is exactly the nerdy level that I like to go into and people kind of hate when I do it. When I left Silicon Valley, I had full on FOMO for the next like 2 months before I got to go back again. And then I stayed a month the next time and I got even more like excited about it. We got to do some design sprints over there. Still felt like a total imposter the whole time. Like, why is anyone allowing me to be here? I felt like I had to raise my game because the people around me were smarter and more enthusiastic than me. And it's something that I really enjoy about it, right? And I'm also craving now to go back again because there's that feeling like I really need to up my game every time I go there.
Yeah, it does create that feeling. I think that's exactly what makes it work so well. That's, I think, a big part of what makes it work so well. And I think everybody has imposter syndrome here. And I think the truth is that like if you're into it, you must care about it or you wouldn't have gone to all the trouble because it is a troublesome place to go to. It's a hassle to visit it. It's a hassle to live here. But I think that the one thing that what you're saying made me think about is how this outside perception of tech companies as being kind of evil, aggressive, it's very understandable. It's a big narrative these days. People are talking about that more and more. And there's things like this Facebook thing that just came out with the user data and stuff that happens where people make mistakes and maybe they're careless. But I think that what often happens is that there's this rush to judge what the tech companies are doing. And I think increasingly we just have this like narrative of like the tech companies are evil and they're consciously like plotting against their customers. This is something that, I've been thinking about a lot as writing this book, Make Time, is kind of a big part of it is how do you control the distractions? And how do you control your relationship with social media, with the news, with your email, with all these things that a lot of people say like, look, these have been like consciously engineered to selfishly gobble up your time. And I think it's a little more complicated than that. Like you said, like when you get under the surface, the reality is the people building these products really care about them. And maybe I'm sure there are exceptions, but for the most part, people really actually want to do the right thing. They want to build something that's going to make the quality of life better for folks. And that's hard to do. It's actually hard to do that right. And there are incentives that conflict with that. But it's important to have had that experience to say like, it's not black and white. And it certainly is not, I don't think, an evil industry. I think when you get behind the scenes of most industries, you find that they're not evil. And people actually want to do right and are doing their best and their hardest to serve their customers well. But everybody has to figure out also when you're in Silicon Valley, are you drinking the Kool-Aid? Are you like underwater? Are you just in this like bubble, this echo chamber of more and more and more and more and more and more tech is okay, faster, 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 like all of these things that we all geek out about and nerd out about. Is that okay? Is what I'm doing like actually makes sense in a broader like human sense? Is this like, are we being respectful of people? And so the tech companies have a responsibility to be aware of the bubble that is, it's never more concentrated than it is in Silicon Valley. And then as customers, you have to say like, I can't just say they're evil, like wait for the government to regulate them so that I can have my attention back. You also have to like define your own boundaries and things.
I think if I was like giving advice to some young designer today and they were trying to choose between like London or Berlin or San Francisco, there's one guaranteed place to aggressively accelerate your career, and it's San Francisco, right? It's the Silicon Valley area. I feel like I learned and got more connections in 1 week than I would normally on like a 6-month period in Berlin. It's really a different story. I mean, like Jake said, if you're willing to put up with crazy high rent, probably pretty long work days, a horrible commute, a lot of other negative things for living in a city that's so popular and so in high demand. For some reason, it just never came up for me when I was starting everything out. But if I had known about the Silicon Valley area and kind of what it was actually like when I was younger, when I was trying to learn more about being a designer and boost my career, I would have been there in a second. I was really considering moving there last year, and it's just like, it's biting at my heels.
It's like, you know, in the United States, if you were into movies, you would want to move to Los Angeles, probably. If you were into theater, you'd want to move to New York, or if you were into finance, you'd want to move to New York. And probably, you know, there's exceptions, but probably those are the places where those things are really centered. And if you're in design, if you're in tech, like if you have an opportunity to spend some time there, whether it's visiting people and getting the chance to visit some companies or, you know, doing a little bit of work there, what's actually moving there. I have started recommending to people the same thing because I felt like it just radically changed how much I understood about how products were made, what was going on inside technology. If you're into that stuff, you're going to find out so much more there. And it is not obvious from the outside that it's that different. It doesn't make sense that it would be that different, that it would be like orders of magnitude different from what's going on elsewhere. But it is.
It is totally different.
And it is a powerful experience.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which country you go to or like how well established the startup scene is or like how amazingly rich the tech company is. There is absolutely no comparison at all.
Every stereotype about it is true. It is also like annoyingly techy, like, and the people and people who are not in tech here are, I think, rightfully frustrated with how much tech is taken over, and
I can imagine
how often tone deaf people are who are in technology and who are in this bubble in their heads all the time and not a part of the community in the same way. It's a struggle as it is in any place where there's one big like runaway industry, and it is a place where a lot of people move from elsewhere. So you have the sense of there are people who have roots here, there are people who don't, who are new to it. How do you make a home for it? And so if you think about it as like a place to live, I find it like challenging to find my place to feel like I fit in. And so in the same way that you talk about it like nipping at your heels to come here, I also feel like living here and having been here for, I guess, like 7 years now. I feel nipping at my heels like, can I stay?
Get out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love it. And I also am like, it's crazy. That's Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I think Sara Murphy's email, I almost feel like her name sounds fake. I'm very sorry about this, Sara, but it's like such a... Never mind. Jason, you can cut that little last bit out where Actually, no, leave all of that in, please.
Yeah, leave that for sure.
Jake, I think it's actually a good idea to finish up this episode. We've run for, like 30 minutes-ish. So I think there's really no time to go to more messages without making this a whopper of an episode. And I feel like it would also kind of kill the mood that we've created around Silicon Valley, which I think was an interesting enough conversation. Where can people find you on the internet, Jake?
JakeKnapp.com. Also, check out maketimebook.com where you can find out about the new book. And also at Jake K on Twitter. Jonathan.
Wow, such an attention word, whatever. People can find me on Instagram at JIceCream, just JIceCream, and just find me on Instagram.
Do you think that's better? You have one call to action at the end there. You just have one place for people to go. Do you think I should just have one?
I think it's fine. I think you should just go wild. Just go wild. It's
just
fine.
Go wild. Yeah.
I'm also going to tell people that if you want to write into the Product Breakfast Club podcast, And if you want us to like basically feature your mail for 30 minutes, next time we'll try to go through them a little bit quicker. It's pbc@ajsmart.com. So PBC is obviously for Product Breakfast Club. And also to announce, I guess we kind of pre-announced this last week, that Jake is going to be coming to Berlin.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Official announcement. Jake's going to be coming to Berlin in June, and I guess it's June 26th and 27th now, the official dates.
Oh, man, I can't remember if it's 26th and 27th or the 27th and the 28th.
Let me just check this out here. It's the 27th and the 28th.
If you're listening to the podcast now, just hold while John looks this up online.
No, this is good stuff, Jason. Don't cut it out. And also, please leave that bit in. So, yeah, Jason's coming to Berlin. Jason's going to be running the workshop. So, Jake's going to be coming to Berlin. We're going to be holding a 2-day design sprint bootcamp on the 27th and 28th of June 2018. This is going to be the first 2-day bootcamp we've run since San Francisco together, and that was in November. This is basically the best way to learn how to run your own design sprints, getting all the tips and hacks from Jake and myself, and also kind of like the updated versions of the exercises. And at the very end, you get the closest thing to a official certificate that you could possibly get, which is basically a piece of paper that Jake has signed and we have signed. That's close enough to official. So that's happening in June. And if you use the code PBC Podcast April, when you check out, you'll get €250 off.
Whoa.
Yeah, man, I know.
A lot of money.
The tickets are very expensive, Jake. So it barely makes a dent. It barely makes a dent.
No. But it's like a 2-day long live episode of the Product Breakfast Club.
It's a beast of a workshop. We do them very rarely. These are like happening once every 6 to 8 months. There are obviously millions of other design sprint workshops out there, but this is the real deal. The early bird prices.
This is an amazing. This is like a second episode about the content marketing is just off the hook right now.
De la creme. And the early bird price ends on May 16th. And May 16th is Pierce Brosnan's birthday, by the way. I just wanted you to know that. That is on purpose. We chose May 16th because of that. The prices are €1,000 less in early bird mode. So, yeah, that's it. If you want to learn about that, just go to learndesignsprints.com and look at the upcoming events, and you'll find Jake's lovely face somewhere there.
Nice domain name there. I can't believe that was available. Can't believe nobody else.
I know, man. Hey, did you actually see learndesignsprints.com? It's actually not a disgusting website. It's
actually a good website. We talked about
it's close
just
enough
to bring it all together, because we talked about building websites at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, oh my God.
You guys apparently learned how to build websites. What do you know? Design agency. It only took you
still pretty broken.
Years. Nice job.
I'm looking at it right now, and I can see that the early bird, it says here, early bird ends
by the time the
early bird
comes
ends
out.
On March 16th. Whatever. It's close enough. So, Jake, have a great evening or morning.
In this episode.
Kill me. Kill.
We have to sing it out. Sing it out.
Okay.